So you'd prefer us to use headphones?
If you do have them, that would be great, yes.
Let me try these.
Okay, we can see Brian, Robert, hello.
Hello there.
Can you guys see me?
Not yet, Camille. Hi, Karen, I can see you.
Brian, your report is incredibly timely for this week.
Yes, we were debating when to get it out. There's never a good time, but it seemed to be, we just decided to go ahead and do it.
Perfect. I will certainly be referencing it in my opening.
Oh, good.
Stop video. I'm not sure why my video is not working.
I noticed there's a little button that appears at the top that says you have to agree to broadcast. I hadn't seen that before, but after I hit that, it allowed.
Do you see this broadcast button, Camille?
Yeah, I'm not even seeing myself at the top of the screen. Hold on.
Did someone just click broadcast? Okay, someone has just clicked broadcast, and so what that means is that participants can now join the webinar. And so we now have an audience of people who are able to join. That's not a problem. We'll figure out that in a second. But unfortunately, I can't undo that. So it's meant that we've now gone live and that all participants have joined.
But we don't have, do we? We have, yeah, people.
Apologies, James. I think that was me because I couldn't seem to activate my video camera, and I saw that button at the top that says you can't activate your video camera until broadcasting, but I think I may have misinterpreted that button.
Right. Okay. At this point, I don't think I can do anything about that. So for everyone who has joined us already, thank you. If you just bear with us, we'll actually be starting the session in 25 minutes, but we are just getting some technical issues sorted now. So, okay. Interpreters, you should both be set up. Alfredo and Maria, let me know if you have any issues, but otherwise, I think you're set. Okay.
Do you want me to test the languages just to be sure?
Yeah, if you'd like to, that would be great, Maria.
So, I'll go to French first. This is Camilla. Bonjour, oui, merci.
Have the basics done. Good morning to the other panelists. I think we've heard from everybody.
María, ¿me escuchas? Ah, ok. Buenos días, sí. Muchas gracias.
So, Robert.
Fine.
Thank you, Camilla. Robert and Brian, we can see you and hear you. Patricia, I can see you now. Can we hear you?
Yes, you can now.
Wonderful, and that sounds good to me. Hyacinth, are you there? And Yabba, I don't know if you just want to quickly come on.
Hi, James. Good morning, everyone. I cannot start my video because it seems you need to allow me to do so.
Yeah, but we did have a slight issue that the webinar has accidentally gone live. So unfortunately, people can join ahead of time, but we're almost there with everything. So what we'll do once we've got everyone technically confirmed, we'll just turn off the cameras and leave it running.
Sounds good, James.
Thank you. Josephina, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, but I can, I don't know why I can't start my video.
Okay, you should be able to start it now if you try it.
I'm trying. Okay.
There we go.
Morning.
Morning. We can see you.
Good morning. So has anyone who needs to use video been able to, has everyone who needs video been able to turn on their video?
I can't do it now. Oh, let me see if I can try again.
I'm good, James.
Oh yeah, I can now. I can.
Yeah.
Hi,
Okay.
Java.
Hi, Patricia.
Morning.
And good morning to all the panelists. For those of you that have not met me, at least in person, my name is Joannex Batista. I'm the CEO of the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, one of the organizer institutions for the meeting. And we really would like to thank all of our panelists for today's session, for being with us and taking time out of your very busy agendas. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. And
So
James,
Yaba. Sorry, Rob, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for those who were, for better or worse, able to join so early, they can see how well organized this this group is. No technical difficulties. Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you spoke too soon because I just saw a message from Camille saying he's having technical difficulties. What?
I don't see Camille connected. Do you see?
He must have.
He must
No,
have tried to come on.
He is in the panelists list.
No, he's in the, yeah, he's in the attendees list now.
Oh.
Let me send him the link again.
That's okay. I can promote him to panelist.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Did we check Hyacinth? I heard Hyacinth, but I didn't see.
Say something to us.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Lovely to see all of you. And thanks for this.
We have Camille with us now.
Yeah.
Jaba was gonna, Camille?
Yeah, how do I activate my video? I mean, it says mute video rename.
In the left corner, left bottom corner, you have mute and video. Start video.
There you have recording. I didn't see this. Oh, mute. Oh, sorry. It's right at the bottom. All right, I got it.
Okay, perfect.
Now we see you. Good morning.
Hey, morning, everyone.
Morning, all. Karen, would you just like to run through the schedule, the plan quickly? And I also wanted to say, for those of you that aren't wearing headphones, if you do have them available, will be really helpful, just to make sure there's no interruptions while you're talking.
Sure. Let me look for. I made my own guide, but I'm going to use Camilla's guide to run through.
I can quickly help you if you want.
Sure. Go ahead, Camilla. I have it, but go ahead.
So James will open the session. We'll give all the logistic details, and we'll have the quick polls, asking people region and sector. And then he will introduce you. You will explain the session has 2 parts, and you will introduce Rob. Rob has the opening, and I believe you are going to invite Yaba to give an update on Haiti. Is that right?
That's my understanding.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So after you finish the opening speech, you go back to Karen, and then Karen invite the panelists, Camille, Brian, Patricia, and Hyacinth, to start the panel. The panel will have around a little less than 1 hour, probably 1 hour. So Hyacinth will speak first, and then Karen, who is the second speaker. Camille, Brian, and Patricia, right?
Right.
Okay. Then we'll have a quick Q&A. People can post questions in the Q&A tool. So Karen will get some questions from the audience and read to you guys. You answer. And when we finish the panel, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say as well, if the questions pick up, any help you can do in answering in the chat is also good.
True. Yes, we have been doing this in the previous days, and it's good because we cannot answer all the questions. And then we go to the second part of the session, which is the talk with the 8 NCTFs that are already partners of the CBF. So I only see Josefina for the second part. I think the others are going to join later. So make sure to get them through WhatsApp and to ask them to join muted so they don't disrupt the first part. What else? And that's it. Oh, and I forgot, Karen, you have the Blue Finance video in your opening, right?
Yeah.
After Rob. Okay. Okay. Then Hyacinth and Brian have slides, and you guys will share your own slides.
Yes.
If there is any issues, we have them also. So if there are any issues at the moment, I have them open here. Well, Karen has, because I won't be hosting. And that's it, I think.
Okay, does anyone have any technical questions or other questions? Non-technical questions? No. One thing to note is that given that we do have a large number of panelists, there will be a chat box and a Q&A box both open. You can use either of those. The chat will be obviously people introducing themselves, adding comments, but if you see a question come up in the Q&A, if we have a large number of questions, it may be that Karen won't be able to get through all of those. So you can actually type a written answer in the Q&A box if there's something you're burning to respond to. And it may be that even if you type a written answer, Karen will still call on you to say that out loud as well. And Karen, I think you know this, but just to clarify, when you click on Q&A, you'll see at the top it says open, answered, and dismissed. So if someone does type in a written question, it will go to the answered box, but you may want to just check there to see them so you don't miss on any questions that come through. But obviously that will depend on how many come through. I'll do a quick poll at the start. We're not using polls otherwise. I will play the video, but otherwise you should be able to share the video, share your own slides. And now, because we have gone live early, I think we'll just ask everyone to mute and turn off their cameras, and then on the hour, I'll count everyone in and make sure we go live on that front. And if any questions come up in the meantime, do just shoot me a message in the chat or as we're going on.
Thank you, James.
Everybody okay? Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good morning, everybody. We'll be getting started in just under 1 minute.
This is Anjali Brathwaite.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session on sustainably financing protected areas and effective management. My name is James Elsmore from Island Innovation. I'm the Master of Ceremonies for this event. I'm just going to give you a few quick technical pointers before we get started, and then we'll hand over to our moderator for the session. Delighted to have you all here today for the third day. It's been a fantastic week of different events, and I hope you've all enjoyed it as much as I have. So in this session, you've got a really good lineup of speakers. For those of you who've attended our sessions on Monday, they were also in a similar webinar mode, and so you will know that this is being live streamed to Facebook. All of our sessions are also being recorded and will be available afterwards. And also we have live interpretation into French and Spanish. And so if you would like to listen to this in French or Spanish, you can click at the bottom of the screen. You'll see a button that says interpretation and choose the option of French or Spanish. And if you want to listen in English, you don't need to do anything, just listen as normal. We also have a Q&A option and a chat option. So I can already see in the chat, a few of you have said, hello, good morning, Hans, Hayden, Olayumi, Maxine, great. I can see people starting to come up in the chat. Do make sure that you select all panelists and attendees. It's the little blue box above where you type your message so everyone can see. And please do go ahead and just type in your name, organization, and where you're joining from so we can see that. You'll notice that we have a Q&A box, which is separate. If you click on the Q&A box, you'll be able to submit questions. We encourage you to submit questions throughout the session. And our moderator at the end of the session, there'll be plenty of time to discuss those. And so please do submit your questions there. Don't put them in the Q&A in the chat box because they might get missed. And I can see a few of those messages coming in. People have selected all panelists. So if that was you, please click that blue box, select all panelists and attendees, and resend your message so everyone can see it. I'm just going to do a quick poll before we get started. Really interested to know who we've got with us today. So that should now pop up on your screen. You'll see the first question is asking which sector you represent, and the second sector is asking which region you are joining from. Okay, if I could just ask our panelists not to click on the end poll. I've had to launch that again. Sorry about that. It's just going out now. If you already answered, you might need to do it a second time to make sure, but I think I can guess which region most of our participants are joining from looking at the chat as well. Lots of people joining in. Okay, I'll end the poll and share results, and you'll see that around almost 50% of you are from the NGO sector, others joining from academic sector, private sector, and foundations, and over half of you are from the Caribbean. One person from the Caribbean diaspora, and others spread out over Europe, North America, Asia Pacific, Africa, and Latin America. That's fantastic. So with that, I will hand over to our moderator, Karen. Karen McDonald Gayle is the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund's Conservation Finance Program Manager, and she will introduce the rest of the speakers. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, James. Good morning to everybody. And thank you so much for joining us. As James just said, my name is Karen McDonald, and I am with the CBF as a Conservation Finance Program Manager. Just in case we have some new faces and friends in the audience, very quickly, the CBF is an umbrella fund with a flexible structure to implement innovative solutions for resource mobilization at the regional level throughout the Caribbean. And we have a range of financial instruments that we use. The two main ones right now are under the Conservation Finance Program, we have a pool of funds that we manage under the CBF endowment. And under the Climate Change Program, we have funds for an ecosystem adaptation program. And in all, we manage $125 million US. If you want to know any more about our work, please feel free to check out our website at caribbeanbiodiversityfund.org. So my focus today is on the program that I have been leading, which is the Conservation Finance Program. And it focuses on the conservation and effective management of biodiversity and natural resources. And it's mainly supported through the CBF Endowment Fund. Currently, that fund is at $75 million US, and the proceeds of the funds benefit partner national funds who in turn lead grant-making programs at the sub-regional and national levels using CBF and other resources. One of the priorities of our support has been the development of financial mechanisms for the funds and for conservation and biodiversity in the region. And these funds are to be able to provide resources to combine with the CBF resources and increase the conditions of conservation financing throughout the region. Last year, those of you who were with us know that we had a lot of discussion about that contribution from other sources, and we're pleased to announce that the CBF has put together a matching requirement policy, which is now in place and which we have been working with our National Conservation Trust Fund to implement. The NCTFs have been working individually and as a consortium with the CBF and on their own on a range of potential finance mechanisms and other opportunities to mobilize resources for their activities. And we're very pleased with their progress over the years that we've been working with them. In addition, last year you would have heard from Blue Finance, and in November of 2019, the CBF signed a memorandum of understanding with Blue Finance to promote the creation of sustainable finance mechanisms for marine protected areas in CBF countries. And we will now have a quick video that gives you an overview of Blue Finance and an update on their work to date. James, if you have that video.
I'll be with you in just 1 second on the video.
All right, and while we're queuing that up, oh, it's up now, I think.
This is Anne-Julie Brathwaite from Blue Finance, providing an update of our activities and those relevant to CBF CCI countries. Just a quick reminder, we signed an MOU with CBF in late 2019, and this is to create sustainable finance mechanisms for relevant countries. We've already implemented this solution in the Dominican Republic for one of the largest MPAs in the region, Arrecifes de Sureste, and we want to upscale this approach to other MPAs. We have 3 relevant projects in the works. Our solution is based on 3 pillars. The first is a lease agreement signed with a non-profit NGO and government, with the government giving the NGO the permission to manage the MPA. The second is tangible and diverse revenue models. These are primarily tourism-based. We're looking further than the traditional tourism-based activities and moving into innovative ideas such as virtual reality. And we're also looking further afield for non-tourism income-generating mechanisms such as blue carbon. The third pillar is blended finance, and this will provide upfront capital to get things going, to get things where they should be. For example, buying the equipment, putting in the moorings, paying staff, and so on. The benefits of governments are clear. It's a turnkey solution. And for government, it allows them to focus their resources elsewhere and allows a more nimble NGO the ability to monitor and to manage the MPA. There's no increase in public debt. There's no transfer of property, and government maintains its core functions. The activities that are carried out by our partners in the Dominican Republic are normal. There's nothing new here. Sustainable practices for fishing and diving, ecosystem monitoring, coral reef restoration, income generating activities with fishers, compliance, and public awareness. We've spoken before about Dominican Republic. We're also working in Bahamas with the Bahamas National Trust, structuring blended finance solutions. In St. Kitts and Nevis, we are re-engaging the government for discussions. We previously got cabinet approval to implement the solution, but there's now a new cabinet. And in Grenada, we're in very early discussions with the government with respect to the Grand Anse MPA. Just a quick look at one of our innovative tools. This is a VR center set up in the lobby of a hotel in Saint Martin, which allows the guests to pay a small voluntary fee and allows them the opportunity to view the underwater world. Thank you.
Thank you. And as Blue Finance has noted, sustainable finance for protected area management requires a mix of resources. And that's what we want to talk to you about this morning. A little bit more about the protected area management side of things. And particularly our theme and focus for this morning is sustainably financing protected areas effectively with effective management. Immediately after the panel discussion that we are about to start, we will be going into, I will provide an update on the endowment fund and the work that we have been doing with the National Conservation Trust Fund. And we will make sure to have a discussion with them as well on their ideas on the topic of sustainable financing, effective management, and protected areas involvement. So to start off, I'm very pleased to invite Dr. Robert Brumbaugh, who is the Executive Director of the Caribbean Division of the Nature Conservancy, to provide a brief opening statement on how sustainable financing of protected areas supports effective management, and also, of course, to talk more about some of the regional partnerships that TNC has been supporting. Rob has been with TNC for over 15 years and is credited with conceiving TNC's award-winning Mapping Ocean Wealth Initiative, which has helped to shape the Caribbean Regional Oceanscape Project. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you very much, Karen and James, for hosting the session, and for all who are joining us today from around the world. Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and good afternoon or good evening where appropriate. It's a great pleasure to participate in this CCI-CBF week. And although we all, I think, we're looking forward to being in the Bahamas this week, I have to say this has been a spectacular success so far. And so it's a pleasure to offer these opening remarks ahead of this panel session on sustainably financing marine protected areas. Today's panelists will offer important insights about the relationship between effective management outcomes and the sources of funding that enable those outcomes. The mission of my organization, the Nature Conservancy, is to protect the lands and waters on which all life depends. And this includes, of course, people. What this means in the Caribbean is that we add a little bit of nuance to our mission. And our vision for our Caribbean operations is to create a resilient Caribbean where both people and nature thrive together. Resilience is built into our vision and into our work as a partner organization working in the Caribbean. Effectively managed marine protected areas are one important tool that we can use to increase resiliency across our region. When designed well and with stakeholders directly informing their design, they improve livelihoods. They can address and mitigate climate change, and they can even help communities cope with the inescapable effects of climate change itself, such as storms and flooding. The clear value of nature to people is why TNC was so keen to be one of the primary architects of the Caribbean Challenge Initiative and bring together the 5 original CCI governments, the Bahamas, Grenada, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, to launch the initiative in Vaughan in 2008. It's why in 2011 and 12, the Conservancy convened 3 high-level government preparatory meetings that culminated in the Summit of Political and Business Leaders held in the BVI in 2013, launching the 2nd phase of the CCI. It's why we are proud to celebrate with everyone this week and also reaffirm the Conservancy's commitment to the CCI and to support the governments who continue to focus on a sustainable future, despite or perhaps because of the profound challenges we're facing today. Much of the work of our 60 staff, who work from 6 in-region offices, is designed to support the conservation ambitions of member countries and territories. One example we are proud to highlight, the online CCI story map that helps people learn about the CCI goals and see the impressive progress that's been made toward Goal 1, 20% protection by 2020. We are also proud of our support for Goal 2 of the CCI, the sustainable financing architecture, both by directly capitalizing the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund with a contribution of $8 million from private individuals and foundations, part of that blended finance, and through staff who serve on 6 National Conservation Trust Fund boards, as well as on the Conservation Biodiversity Fund itself. This panel continues to develop the theme that defines this week: nature-based solutions for our Caribbean future. Even with much success in our wake here at 2020, we are indeed focusing forward on the future because we have not yet arrived at the destination we collectively have in mind. And our COVID and economic reality has, if anything, reinforced the importance of getting our relationship with nature right, of continuing to strive for the kind of protection that returns the gains we know are found through effective management. Of course, this is not free. It requires that we dedicate financial resources to the task. But an exciting report issued just last week by the Campaign for Nature shows that this investment is not a sunken cost. Rather, this carefully researched report reveals that the global economy would be far better off with more nature protected. In fact, the economic benefits of protecting 30% of our planet's land and ocean, the proposed draft Conservation of Biodiversity 2030 goal, Convention on Biodiversity's 2030 goal, outweigh the management and implementation costs by 5 to 1. With that kind of return, the time to invest in nature is now. TNC embraces this idea that nature conservation is the best investment we can make for our future. Of course, as others have noted this week, an array of financing solutions is needed. There's no simple single solution or financial pathway, but rather a constellation of approaches. The success of the CCI and the CBF has opened people's eyes to what's possible through partnerships, persistence, and perseverance. The CCI and CBF accomplishments, despite the challenges that loom over us today, are why we support the Campaign for Nature and echo others who this week have called on us to raise our sights even higher, taking the bold step to protect 30% and to develop sustainable financing mechanisms to effectively finance that and manage those areas at that scale. We stand ready to engage with Caribbean governments to develop and implement plans to increase their protected area inventory, to achieve the CBD 2030 goal, and to work on innovative financing solutions to achieve effective management of existing and new protected areas. During this most uncertain time, we are most certain of this, that a resilient Caribbean where people and nature thrive together is not just possible, it is the only viable option for a truly sustainable future. Thank you once again for this opportunity to open today's panel session, and I'm excited to turn the floor over to Yavanex Batista, CEO of the CBF, for an important announcement that underscores our belief in a brighter Caribbean future. Karen and Yaba, over to you.
Good morning to all that have joined us for today's session, and thank you, Rob, so much for those words and highlighting the importance of continuing to move forward as partners in this task, which is safeguarding our natural environment. And today, I want to echo some of the words from Rob by continuing to celebrate. And I'm very happy to share with all of you that during this week, the government of Haiti, the Haiti Biodiversity Fund, FHB in French, and the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, we are in the process of signing a cooperation agreement that is going to unlock $3 million from the GEF World Bank project called Resilient Landscapes, and that it's implemented by the government of Haiti. These resources are going to be deposited in the CBF endowment and are earmarked for the benefit of Haiti and are going to be co-invested together with the resources that we already have in our endowment from the German government for Haiti. This agreement that we are signing very soon, it's also linked to the work and the efforts between FHB and CBF related to finalizing the Haiti Biodiversity Fund eligibility request process that will end up with the signature of a partnership agreement between the Haiti Biodiversity Fund and the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund. And after we sign this agreement, then the FHB will be able to access resources from our endowment. So we are very excited about this partnership that we are building with the Trust Fund in Haiti and with the government of Haiti. And with this deposit, our endowment will then soon be close to the $80 million mark. So we are very happy to share this news with you. And of course, this would not be possible without the very hard work from our colleagues from the Haiti Biodiversity Foundation and the government of Haiti, and also to the work that many partners have been putting very long hours and to support the establishment of the Haiti Biodiversity Fund. And this includes, of course, the government of Haiti through the Ministries of Agriculture and Environment, also includes the government of Norway through UN Environment, the Nature Conservancy, the GEF and the World Bank, the Swiss Cooperation Agency, the United Nations Development Program, the Community Organized Relief Effort, CORE, formerly known as the Jenkins Penn Haitian Relief Organization, and the Haiti Audubon Society. To all of those partners, thank you very much for making this a reality. Thank you so much. Back to you, Karen.
Thanks. Thank you, Yaba. And of course, congratulations to TNC. Thank you for a most inspiring and thought-provoking opening from Rob, and to Jean Villemon, Maxine, and the team in IT that I've been working with for a while. I look forward to continuing our relationship. And now we'll move straight into the panel. I've been looking in the chat box and I see we have people, of course, from the Caribbean. And of course, I will say big up to them in my Jamaican parlance. And then I will say I saw people from Egypt, from Switzerland. So I'm very excited by the range of persons who have come on board to discuss our topic this morning. The aim of this panel is to promote a discussion about the relationship between effective management and sustainable financing of the protected areas. And without further ado, I'm going to invite Ms. Hyacinth Armstrong-Vaughan, who is the Protected Areas Officer for the Biodiversity and Protected Areas Management, or BIOPAMA program in the Caribbean, to give us her perspective on the topic. Hyacinth, I hand over to you. And I know you're going to be sharing your screen. You'll let us know if you need anything from our side. Welcome.
Thank you, Karen. Good morning, everyone. Okay, you're able to see my screen now?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you to all of you for joining the session, and thank you to the CBF coordinating team, CCI and CBF coordinating team, for inviting me to participate in this panel. I'm the coordinator of the Biodiversity and Protected Areas Management Program for the Caribbean, and I work with the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, IUCN. And the BIOPAMA program here in the Caribbean is working through the Caribbean Protected Areas Gateway to reinforce the management and governance of approximately 788 protected areas, both terrestrial and marine, that we have in the Caribbean member countries of the Organization of the Africa, Caribbean, and Pacific States. And we're doing this through better use and monitoring of information and capacity development on management and governance. These member countries, there are 15 that we are working with, are all signatories to the Convention on Biological Diversity, and therefore have committed to achieving the goals and objectives of the Convention, including those articulated under Goal 4 of the Program of Work on Protected Areas and the AICHI Biodiversity Target 11 of the Strategic Plan for Biodiversity 2011 to 2020. So the AICHI Target 11, which is of interest for this discussion, states that by 2020, which is this year, at least 17% of terrestrial and inland water areas and 10% of coastal and marine areas, especially areas of particular importance for biodiversity and ecosystem services, are conserved through effectively and equitably managed, ecologically representative and well-connected systems of protected areas and other effective area-based conservation measures, and are integrated into the wider landscape and seascape. Under the BIOPAMA program, we have been doing some analysis in the preparation of a State of Protected Areas report for the region. And from our analysis of September 2019 data in the World Database on Protected Areas for the 15 countries we are working with, 2 countries achieved the percentage protection for both terrestrial and marine. That would be Belize and the Dominican Republic. And 5 countries achieved percentage coverage for terrestrial protection: the Bahamas, Trinidad and Tobago, Dominica, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and St. Lucia. And the other countries are on their way to achieving to some level of percentage coverage on either terrestrial and marine, but have not reached the target of 10% marine or 17% terrestrial and inland waters. However, the determining the status of this target as it relates to the other elements, so looking at whether the areas are ecologically representative, if they're effectively and equitably managed and well connected, finding the status of these elements is a challenge, as this information is not captured or reported on by countries. The IUCN's World Commission on Protected Areas developed the Protected Areas Management Effectiveness Framework to help measure protected area effectiveness and to respond to this aspect of the Program of Work on Protected Areas. And numerous tools have since been developed based on this framework and used to facilitate measuring effective protected area management. And within the Caribbean countries we are working with, approximately 25% of the protected areas have carried out some type of management effectiveness assessment for their protected areas. However, most of these assessments are one-off and were conducted as a result of project or donor requirements. Only 2 countries within our grouping, that's Guyana and Belize, have institutionalized management effectiveness within their processes. We hosted a workshop in June of 2018 in St. Lucia to start to sensitize our stakeholders to this process of management effectiveness. And in that workshop, barriers to conducting regular PAME management effectiveness assessments was identified. And these included lack of capacity of protected area staff to carry out assessments, little or no funding available to actually conduct the assessments, and in some instances, limited time, not having it in your regular work schedule or being able to conduct or facilitate the process. So within our program, which runs for 6 years, starting in 2017 and ending in 2023, we have decided that we will work with our project countries to improve this situation. Our approach has been to raise awareness of national protected area agencies and stakeholders to the management effectiveness framework and the importance of carrying out the management effectiveness process for protected areas regularly. We have been facilitating assessment of sites within country and following up to support regular and continuous assessment of sites. So far, we have worked in Antigua and Barbuda, facilitating assessments at 2 sites, Codrington Lagoon and Nelson's Dockyard. We've worked with the St. Vincent and the Grenadines protected area agencies and facilitated assessments of 3 sites, the Tobago Keys Marine Park, the Kings Hill Forest Reserve, and the South Coast Marine Conservation Area. We've worked with the Belize Fisheries Department to facilitate 3 sites assessments, the Glover's Reef and 2 others. And in St. Lucia, we've recently worked with them on assessing the Pitons Management Area, the Point Sable Environment Protection Area, and the Ianola Project Site Area. And in the case of St. Lucia, we have recently completed the development of a national assessment tool, which will be used in country to facilitate assessments of all their protected areas. As Rob said in his opening remarks, proper implementation, and this is really key, proper implementation of management effectiveness, particularly with repeat assessments and consistency with the use of the tools, allows for adaptive management through learning, and also allows for proper identification of needs for improvements in management and the proper allocation of resources, whether it's financial or otherwise. And in addition, the assessment results are important for the definition and implementation of sustainable financing options for the protected areas. The Honorable Minister Steele from Grenada mentioned in his remarks on Monday that the small island developing states are perfect for becoming models of best practice for the sustainable management of our natural resources, provided we have the resources and financial and technical resources available to do so. And I would like to say that in the current scenario and context, we have the financial and technical resources to ensure that in the minimum, the countries of the Africa, Caribbean, and Pacific group of states become models of best practice for management effectiveness of protected areas. Through BIOPAMA, in partnership with the United Nations Environment Program's Caribbean Environment Program, and with the CCI Challenge and the National Conservation Trust Funds, effective management can become a standardized and institutionalized process that will not only improve the efficiency and operation of our protected areas, but also financially. And sorry, I have not scrolled through on my slides, but just to give you a sense, the Dominican Republic here, in terms of percentage coverage, just to give you a sense, this is in our State of Protected Areas report, which will come out later this year. And just to give you an idea of some of the assessments that have been done across the region. Again, this is the type of information that we will have presented within our Caribbean Protected Areas Gateway, which is an online hub for information and data related to protected areas, primarily with the BIOPAMA countries, which are 15 countries, and they are highlighted here with the EEZs shown. But ultimately, we would like the Protected Areas Gateway to support the wider Caribbean region. So with that, I would like to say that we have some more ambitious targets ahead of us and to respond to with the post-2020 framework coming up. So let us put in place now and strengthen now the systems and mechanisms that will help us achieve our national biodiversity conservation goals and in turn respond to the global framework when it is in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Hyacinth, and we look forward to seeing the State of the Caribbean Protected Areas document. That's of great interest, and learning more about the BIOPAMA Gateway. Please remember any questions to post in the Q&A group, and I'm going to move right ahead to welcome in Dr. Camille David, who works with the German International Corporation, GIZ, as a marine expert focusing on climate change adaptation across 8 countries within the Caribbean. And he's going to speak to us a little more on the topic of sustainable finance mechanisms in the Caribbean and achieving effective management. Welcome, David.
Yes, good morning, colleagues. And I'm quite happy for the opportunity to make a presentation on sustainable financing mechanisms and how we improve effectiveness of marine protected area management. Over the last 2 days, I must admit that there has been interesting discourse on how we can greater leverage our natural resource capital to provide sustainable ecosystem services. But at the core of this is the role of marine management and local authorities for managing these critical resources. Let me say, first of all, that there is a clear link between sustainable financing, effective MPA management, and conservation outcomes. Financial resources are required for protected areas to effectively preserve and enhance ecosystem services for natural and regional communities. While the Caribbean islands are best known as global hotspots of marine biodiversity, they remain among the world's most severely affected regions to the effects of climate change. Their performance potential and ability to adapt to climate change is inextricably linked and rooted in their natural resource capital. The designation and functionality of protected areas, therefore, play a very important role in maintaining the diversity of ecosystems and the scale up for broader integrated coastal zone management strategies. Effectively managing these critical resources requires solid financial structures and effective financing mechanisms that ensure and secure long-term sources of income. CARICOM has a very important role to play in providing the leadership and improving administration and management of MPAs to promote the establishment of and access to the necessary financing structures and mechanisms to facilitate regional exchange. Let me first of all, of course, define what the key problem from our own experience as a regional program, that is the CATS program, working over selected countries over the last 8 years. For MMAs to be effectively and sustainably managed, and by extension to continue to provide goods and services, they must secure, or they must be able to secure and access stable and sufficient long-term financial resources for the core management functions. Unfortunately, many local authorities across the region have not been able, or they lack the sustainable financing systems required to discharge their tasks, and that is implementation, monitoring, supervision of protected functions, and utilization outcomes. To operationalize sustainable financing systems for protected areas, one must consider the following key aspects. Number one, there is need for establishment of an appropriate enabling environment that involves treating marine protected areas or marine managed areas as an important part of national development. And this can be achieved through, one, the development and implementation of legal and organizational frameworks. That involves policy, laws, regulations, procedures, institutional mechanisms, financial strategies, and the integrating of financial mechanisms through development planning. GIZ has been very instrumental through our CATS program in laying the foundation across several islands for the introduction of sustainable financing mechanisms, including capacity building and the development of critical management tools, such as the management plans, financial strategies, legal and organizational frameworks, which in part has played to the improved revenue collections and the functioning of local MPAs across several islands. The second key point I think that must be considered for establishing sustainable financing mechanisms is ongoing capacity development. This is absolutely critical to provide the skills, the resources, the data, capacities for system-wide planning and management to fund development financing and provide financial advisory services to management institutions. This has been one of the fundamental issues within many local authorities, where they lack the tools and they lack the capacity to implement a lot of the management tools that have been created. Very importantly, as well, is the establishment of a National Protected Areas Perpetual Fund. And much has been said of the establishment of the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund and the National Conservation Trust Fund, which provides a permanent, reliable source of funds that is necessary to ensure effective protected area systems management. And so far, In many islands, the National Conservation Trust funds that have been established is making progress on these ends. And obviously for those islands that have not yet implemented National Conservation Trust funds, there's tremendous opportunities and there's tremendous advantages in doing so. Permit me just to say that National Conservation Trust funds are critical for raising the profile of environmental and conservation issues across the region. They are flexible and resilient, and what I think is very important is the capacity to leverage additional funds. The next point that I think that is critical is the reshaping and the realignment of management boards with conservation trust fund and CBF objectives for effective drawdowns. And this is what I call building bridges to enhance integrative strategy development. And that is very, very crucial. In addition, strengthening regional cooperation to achieve more complementary and joint management to optimize limited resources is also a very important consideration. And governments are the key in allowing this to be successful. For building greater regional collaborations. The political commitment, for example, of the CCI goals have been essential to attract donors and to help achieve these goals, including building the finance architecture. CAMPAM, for example, is a regional organization and network which seeks to increase MPA capacity through training, technical assistance, and communication, and has a critical role to play in this process. Consultation promotes mutual learning and approaches, as well as practices. In this context, the GIZ is implementing a new MPA financing program in selected Caribbean islands. The new program aims to tackle sustainable financing of MPAs or MMAs and the administrative structures. It will also help to develop, test, and validate solutions that contribute to sustainable financing structures and mechanisms for effective management of protected area in selected Caribbean islands. And this includes Dominica, St. Lucia, Grenada, St. Vincent. And so the key outcome of this soon to be implemented MPA financing program by GIZ will have the following three critical outputs. One, the management boards within these islands will charge reasonable non-discriminatory access and user fees for marine protected areas. And the goal here is in tandem, this will create and improve budget allocations in order to cover operating costs of marine protected areas. The second output, which is very critical, is improving access to finance for management boards through National Conservation Trust funds. This output will also focus on developing human capacity in national boards, training measures, skills, individual, technical advice of management boards to draw up successful applications of finance and allocation of higher revenues from marine protected areas on the output one, as matching funds in the CBF process will improve the chances of National Conservation Trust funds receiving return distributions. And output three, establishing effective mechanisms for administering revenue, that is fee collection, other financial flows as part of a regional approach for sustainable governance of MPAs in the Eastern Caribbean. This will strengthen the capacities. This will strengthen the capacities of national authorities for deploying integrated digital applications for easier use and higher transparencies of financing systems and collection procedures. Support from relevant CARICOM authorities, COTED and CAFA, will be important players in expediting the adoption of regional guidelines for the national implementation of these effective financing mechanisms. This program—
Thank you, Camille. I'm sorry, we are very tight on time. I encourage questions and continuing discussion in the chat on the new program because it's very, very interesting. I give you 30 seconds just to wrap up, and I apologize again for interrupting.
Yes, no problem. So my final point is that this program would be a best case example of defining a meaningful pathway for sustainable financing of a marine protected area in the region. And it will bring about the transformational change that is required in the functioning and the implementation of a sustainable financial management strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Camille. Sorry again for needing to interrupt. And I will go straight into the next program, and then hopefully we will have a nice lively question and answer to go back to any questions you all have. We now have Van O'Donnell, who is the director of the Campaign for Nature, an effort which is supported by the Wyss Foundation that aims to increase global targets of financing for protected areas under the Convention on Biological Diversity. And he's going to tell you a little bit more about the role of private foundations in the support for protected areas and effective management, and some other things that the Campaign for Nature group is doing. Good morning, Brian. Thank you.
Good morning, Karen, and thank you for inviting me to this panel. I also want to say congratulations to Haiti. That was exciting news we heard at the outset of the panel. I'm going to share my screen here quickly and show a few slides.
Sure.
So a quick background. Hopefully everyone can see the slides now. Campaign for Nature is a relatively new entity, started just in 2018, and as Karen mentioned, we have been started as a partnership between the Wyss Campaign for Nature and the National Geographic Society. We have three overarching goals that are critical. We heard Hyacinth talk about AICHI Target 11 and the Convention on Biological Diversity's targets. They will be revised coming up here in Kunming, China in 2021. We just heard the dates will be in late May of 2021. And so the Campaign for Nature is encouraging governments to agree to protect at least 30% of the planet's land and seas. It's important to know that we take a broad view when we say protected. That includes indigenous protected areas, other effective conservation measures, as well as recognizing that that's a global goal. So AICHI Target 11 had been interpreted to be each nation must meet that goal independently. We're proposing a 30% goal. That is a global one. Some nations will be able to achieve it. Some will go far beyond it, and some will not be able to achieve it, but will contribute towards it. It's also important to know that we're supporting the key role that indigenous people play in protected areas and protected lands, and we want to make sure that their rights are secured in advance in this process. And critical to the panel today, securing the necessary funding for effective management is central to our effort. Creating 30% of the planet and securing that in protected areas without accompanying that with sustainable finance would not be a success in our mind. So that's a key part of our campaign objectives. We have been seeing some progress in the campaign to date, specifically in that 30% target. Just late last year, we saw the Convention on Biological Diversity reported its zero draft. The zero draft is really the first draft of what a post-2020 biodiversity framework will look like and what the new targets to replace the AICHI targets could be. And we did see that the 30% target was included, which we saw was a strong sign of success. And that's thanks to the advocacy of many people on this panel and in this webinar, as well as countries throughout the world who are joining in to call for that. A number of Caribbean countries have been pushing that, and we hope that more will join that call to increase the ambition to at least 30% by 2030. But there's much to be done on the finance part to accompany the policy part and the protected area targets. Rob mentioned in his presentation early on about a new report, and Campaign for Nature is pleased to have just released last week a major international report on the costs, benefits, and economic implications of protecting 30% of the planet for nature. It is on our website, campaignfornature.org. We can link to it. It's an independent study, so even though we commissioned it, it was done by a lead author, Anthony Waldron, at the University of Cambridge, together with 100 other scientists and economists. And this independent report was really the first of its kind in its thoroughness, and that it was multi-sectoral. It looked into usually reports on the costs and benefits of protected areas only look at one sector at a time. This one looked at the impacts and benefits to the tourism sector. It looked at agriculture. It looked at the fishery sector, and ran 6 different scenarios for how protected areas could be implemented. The report of this, and really the main takeaway for this, which Rob highlighted, is pretty astounding. Most policymakers think of the nature sector and protecting nature as a drain on the economy, a cost, rather than a contributor. But when we look at the findings of the report, we found that protecting nature was actually a net economic gain, contrary to what most people believe. And that was primarily driven by the tourism sector. I recognize that that tourism now in the time of COVID has ground to a halt, but this is looking at the next 10 years of how we can protect nature. And there is a view that after we all collectively get through this pandemic, that the tourism sector will be one of the leading drivers of economic growth. In fact, it's projected to grow much more rapidly than the agriculture sector, and significantly more than the fishery sector, which is actually projected to shrink, primarily due to the fact that we've been overfishing our fish stocks for decades. So how do we achieve that net economic benefit? Well, the key points that Rob mentioned is we could have up to a 5-to-1 return on our investment in protected areas if we are able to invest in them. That return is both the monetary benefits and the non-monetary benefits, the areas that we take for granted, the storm protection, which I know those of you in the Caribbean recognize how important natural areas can be in reducing the effects of hurricanes. We also have seen that they're critical for climate change, for clean water, and for other economic, non-monetary economic benefits. But all of this will have some cost of investment at the front end. The report did a detailed analysis of how much we are currently spending globally on protected areas and how much is needed. The average of how much is needed for spending on protected areas is an additional about $140 billion a year. We're currently spending $24.3 billion on protected areas, which is significantly less than what we need for the current protected areas we have globally. Currently, we have about a $63 billion shortfall. To get to the full 30%, it's going to be in need of about $140 billion, which sounds like quite a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, but when you compare it to how much we are subsidizing the destruction of nature or some of the other expenditures, it's less than the world spends on video games a year. It's less than a third of what we spend on subsidizing the destruction of nature. So we can get there. But to get there, we're going to need significant increases in investments from multiple sectors, including the public sector. And we heard some great news from GIZ, and the German government has been a leader in this. And so governments need to follow the lead of Germany and increase their official development assistance to help for protected areas. Domestic budgets need to make protected areas a larger percentage of their budgets, because it will be a great economic investment. As we recover from COVID-19, we can see that investing in protected areas can lead us out of this economic morass. In fact, the World Economic Forum just today released a report showing how nature can and should be a key component of building out and building back better from the economic distress that the pandemic has caused. And then philanthropists can play a key role. As I mentioned, Campaign for Nature was supported by the philanthropist Hans-Jörg Wyss, who made an unprecedented commitment to devote $1 billion starting in 2018 for 10 years for the protection of biodiversity, and specifically to help set aside 30% of the world's land and oceans. That's one of the most generous gifts we've seen in the nature sector, but there are numerous other billionaires and other philanthropists who can and should join into philanthropy. Right now, less than 3% goes to nature, and we need to have that significantly increase. Campaign for Nature is working to help increase the budgets for protected areas by advocating that we increase conservation finance from all sectors, from the philanthropic sector, from the public sector, and importantly from the private sector, where corporations can also play a role. So I'm happy to answer questions, but it's an exciting time that we can show that if we do make this investment, we'll have major returns for the economies of the Caribbean, which can lead the way, and in many ways has led the way through its 20 by 20 initiative. So thanks very much.
Thank you so much for that very interesting presentation, Brian. And I'm going to go straight into the final panelist so that we can go straight into that discussion and the questions and comments I already see coming up. So last, but by no means least, we have the Honorable Patricia Abreu Fernández, and she is the Vice Minister in the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources in the Dominican Republic. And she will share with us some lessons learned from the DR. As you all would have heard during the week, the DR is one of the leading countries in terms of meeting the target of 20% protected areas. They're way above that target, and we're going to hear from her on some of her thoughts on effective management and sustainable financing. Welcome, Honorable Minister, Vice Minister, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you to all the colleagues for being here, and especially congratulations to Haiti, which we have been working together on the biological corridor, protecting our protected areas and managing our natural resources as a whole, as an island. So for me, it was a very good news to have that the expectations of great work with them in the future again. For the DR, it's gonna be very short. What I'm gonna say is just a few thoughts on what our experiences have been. Some of the lessons learned from financing the protected areas or the financial mechanisms that we used is the importance to invest in capacity building. It is highly important to train park rangers and protected area managers, not only on the technical aspects of the conservation and sustainability, but also on the administration of the protected areas as a whole, and also natural parks. In the last year, in the DR, we have learned that it's highly rewarded, there is a highly rewarded investment, is the improvement of public areas, of the protected areas, to allow ecotourism activities. Also environmental education, recreation, and other related sustainable uses based on the scenic beauty of the protected areas. The construction also of ecological trails, visitor centers that have allowed to increase the number of visitors, which conveys in a recovery mechanism that allows us to reinvest in those same areas, again, to maintain infrastructure and conservation of threatened species. The third point that I was gonna make is having practical management plans of protected areas. Management plans are technical management instrument in which guidelines for the short and medium term are traced within a protected area. They should also be created during a very participatory process that includes the intervention of both society and experts. In the DR, a good portion of them have been financed from different sources, international cooperation, and also public investment with the support of the international community. These guys actually allow us to make effective use of both human and capital resources for the protected areas. Another great lesson learned is that we have to invest in the eradication of invasive alien species. Eradication of those species, or eradicating species, they pose an endangered, emblematic, and endemic species to improve the quality of the ecosystem, and also reduces the amount of resources that need to be reinvested in the protected area to keep the ecosystem services from functioning. Also, what we have learned is that if we have a fund, we have what we call a patrimonial fund for the protected areas. And what we have learned from that is that we invest in it and only use the interest that it produces annually for protected areas, specialty plans developed by the ministry and the society. And that has allowed us as well to look at to invest more funds in protected areas. The Dominican Republic right now has around 26% of its protected area are on land protected areas, and about 9.6% of them are marine protected areas. So if you put them all together, we have more than 30% of protected areas already ongoing in the Dominican Republic. One of our concerns of this declaration of protected areas is that we need to have more funds for an adequate monitoring and training for, developing more capacity for the people that are going to be actually supervising and taking care of those protected areas in the future. And with that, like I said, it was a very short intervention. I was trying to keep up with the 5-minute timeline, but hopefully we can answer more questions later at the question and answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Patricia, for your very targeted and very, very relevant information on the DR and the processes that they've been using for protected areas management. As I mentioned, you are leaders, and we should learn from the Caribbean, from our neighbors, as to how best to work on these processes. We are going to go straight into the question and answers because we want to make sure that we stick to time. Our panelists are all here with us and on board, and I will start the questions off with a question from Charlene, who asked, what are the opportunities for students to access any of the financing mentioned for their research in protected areas management? So maybe if two panelists, any of the two panelists who have specific information, we would love to hear from you on that. I know Hyacinth, CBF certainly, and BIOPAMA works with some universities, and I think some of the answers come in the work that we do with some of the universities in the area. But I have noted over the few days that there have been a number of graduate students in the calls from across the world, and they are keen and interested. So I think Hyacinth was about to answer. Please go ahead.
Yes, what I didn't mention is BIOPAMA is working with, as you said, the university. In this case, the University of the West Indies is an implementing partner for us. And we are linked directly to the Center for Resource Management and Environmental Studies based in Barbados, CERMES. We have not, within the BIOPAMA program, we are trying to engage students more primarily through the CERMES program. They have a master's program that we have kind of infiltrated. And so we're trying to get the students there to do some of the research that is needed for improving the information on the Caribbean Protected Areas Gateway that I mentioned. And actually, hopefully this, within the next month or two, we will have a student who would be looking at conducting a management effectiveness assessment here in Barbados. That said, we don't actually have direct funding that can go towards student research. Right. Where there is interest, we do entertain the discussions and see how best we could link with a student to provide support to them technically, and where it is possible for research to be financed, and that is a discussion that we can have.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's what I was going to say, that in most cases, it would not be individual support. It would be support through the work that an institution may be doing that's relevant, and that involves graduate students. All right, there is a question for Patricia. In the case of the Dominican Republic, who is responsible for the enforcement in the marine protected areas that are co-managed by an NGO?
During the ministry, inside the Ministry of Environment, we have one department that's called SENPA. It's for the acronyms in Spanish. It's called the National Protection Servicing Agency. And together with the ministry, they work together with the people that work at in the parks and the NGOs to monitor the if there has been anything wrong with in the areas, or also the density. They take care of a lot of important aspects, but it's actually a force. It's kind of an enforcement agency that works together with the ministry and the NGOs.
Thank you. And the biggest challenge and the biggest success of working with that group?
Working with the NGOs actually brings us, it's very important for us to do those strategic alliances, because the ministry, we acknowledge that we cannot do anything alone. And also the NGOs help us get a lot of ideas that sometimes with our work, we're very caught up in our work, and they have very innovative ideas to look into. But also the SEMPA is very important because it's not only for protected areas, it's actually for the whole country. So if anybody sees somebody doing an illicit or trafficking a species or cutting trees inside a protected area, anything that they see, they can call and watch also through a WhatsApp number. And we have GPSs and people, and those that service is allocated nationwide, so they can go directly where there's being called with that information, act, and then they can also take them to justice. Depending, we can put some sanctions on it, depending on the type of illicit that we find in the areas. So I think that it's a very good force, and working together as a team that has been very very successful.
Very interesting. Thank you. Thank you very much. For Brian from Augustine Dominique, how does the 30% allocation proposed by the Campaign for Nature apply in the context of small island developing states?
Sure. Excellent question. Small island developing states are some of the most biodiverse on the planet, and so they play a central role. The percentage that they will set will be up to each individual country, and they will have to determine what they can achieve domestically, both on terrestrial and in the marine space. It's important that the world recognize how important these small island developing states are for biodiversity, and that the world gathered to help provide resources for the management and designation of them. The burden can't be just on small island developing states to protect their biodiversity without resources. So I think they should advocate for a bold target, but also advocate that the world in each of the sectors, the public sector and the private sector, steps up and helps them finance the long-term management of them, because we know they're globally significant and it's important for people as well. So I think they can and will play a central role. We're seeing a number of small island developing states become some of the main advocates for protecting 30% of the planet, both in the UK's Marine Alliance that they've set forward and the High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People that Costa Rica and France are co-leading. Small island developing states are part of both of those coalitions. And so I think they can and should play a central role.
And for those, thank you so much, Brian. And for those who have been involved in the discussion, in terms of context, we tried with CCI to be national level 20% by 2020. And this idea of working at the regional level now is something we have been discussing during our CCI-CBF week. It is an interesting target, and for those of us in the Caribbean, we know it's a number of probably the most governments and territories to work with in one space for that kind of target. So it is an interesting new perspective on the targets going forward. Camille, a question for you. You mentioned capacity building as a critical factor. How will GIZ work with others such as CBF in coordinating efforts to ensure that structures already in place continue to be strengthened, so not duplicating or reinventing?
Yes, this is a very important question. In fact, when we conceptualized the new financing program, we brought across the region many experts, local authority managers, to really contribute to a broad discussion on how we can effectively implement and synergize efforts in implementing these kinds of strategies. But I think what is required at this time to improve collaboration between our own program and the CBF and the National Conservation Trust funds is to provide the continued support in terms of the tools, in terms of other contributions that can really enhance the dissemination of knowledge, training, and to improve overall networking among organizations. So I think this is going to be critical. The fine details of how this can happen will of course become more obvious as we go into the implementation phase, but rest assured that there would be tremendous opportunities to bridge and to synergize efforts between key implementing organizations.
And I'm going to prod Hyacinth to jump in and just say again what the idea behind the gateway is. I think we heard the touch on it, but this is some of what we're trying to do with the gateway, right? This collection of Caribbean information in one space.
Yeah, so the Caribbean Protected Areas Gateway, and I will type the URL in the chat for everyone so you can have a look. It's basically an online platform to support collation of data and information related to protected areas. Now, we're not just looking at the ecological information, but also socioeconomic and governance related information. Of course, there's a lot on the ecological side, and so we're trying to bridge the gap on the socioeconomic and the governance information. So information on management effectiveness assessments, we primarily pull that information from the global database on protected area management effectiveness that is managed by the United Nations Environment Program's World Conservation Monitoring Center based in Cambridge, but we are working closely with them to update information for primarily our 15 countries. And I did indicate which those are in one of the questions that was asked. And we are working with agencies within country to begin to update and capture all of this type of information. We're working with what we call crews, credible, reliable, energetic, and willing persons who indicated their interest to provide us with that information from the 15 countries. And so that's a work in progress, but well, COVID kind of set us back, but we have a plan in place to try to begin to update that information for the countries. But yes, it's the start, and hopefully, like I said, we can expand not just for the 15 countries, but it's relevant for the Caribbean region. We don't have anything like this, I think. So we need to be able to support the region in advancing our goals and objectives.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we have a question for Brian from Sheldon Cohen, who gets a special shout out and hi from me. In the recent report on costs and benefits of protected areas for the 30% goal, were there any conclusions that shed light on the most promising sources of funding in the future? And I saw a tag-on question that asked specifically about private sector involvement in financing. So if you could give us your thoughts on or tell us a little bit about what the report said and answer the question on private sector financing and support for this area.
Sure. So the report really dug into how protected areas would do a return on investment and it quantified how much money would be needed to get that return. There's a subsequent report that we all need to do is to develop two things. One, where that money can and should come from, and then how it should be best spent. In terms of where it could come from, there are a number of entities that are putting forward reports this year about where it can come from, especially the World Economic Forum, the Nature Conservancy. There's a review called the Dasgupta Review out of the UK Department of Treasury that's coming forward that will all look at private sector contributions, some innovative finance mechanisms in terms of where we can do return on investments for protected areas that do have some other investment opportunities. But the report itself that we commissioned didn't go into a deep dive of those sources. Those will be forthcoming. In terms of how it can be spent, I think that trust funds have been a really great thing going forward. The Caribbean Trust Fund is a great example, and each of the country trust funds. We are advocating that these monies do get distributed down to trust funds, and so that they can help do the long-term and sustainable management of protected areas of 30 by 30. The German government is also contemplating a new fund called the Legacy Landscapes Fund to potentially endow protected areas. And we've also seen a new project called Project Finance for Permanence that a number of countries have done long-term investments in protected areas, which is also innovative and should be replicated in our mind across the world. But I'd be happy to connect offline to share more details, because it is a detailed topic, and there are a number of new reports coming out that do really dig into that can help the questioner answer that question in more detail.
Okay. So with that, I am going to thank my panelists. We were able to catch up on time, which is great, but they were great questions. There will be some other questions. We urge you all to keep in touch with the panelists. You will get a list of contact information and share further information with them. But thank you all for your time, and to Rob for opening the session today. You are all welcome to stay on and listen as we move into the next section, which is going to tell you a little bit more about the National Conservation Trust Fund and the work that the CBF has been doing with them over the years. I'm going to share just a couple of slides, and I am trying to work all the various technologies on the work that we have been doing with the Conservation Trust Fund. And the CBF Endowment Fund has been, sorry, let me just get them going and then I will come back to you. There we go. So the CBF has been working in the region, as you all have heard many times over today. Let me just confirm that you all are seeing my presentation before I continue. Yes, no?
Yes, we can see it, Karen. That's working.
Okay. So we have been working in a number of countries in the region for a number of years, as you all know. Sorry, I'm not seeing the right presentation. Sorry about that. And these are the initial countries that we worked with. These countries actually are now with us as full partner funds: the National Conservation Trust Fund of Jamaica, the Grenada Sustainable Development Trust Fund, the Marine Ecosystems and Protected Areas Trust out of Antigua and Barbuda, Fondo Marina from the Dominican Republic, the St. Lucia National Conservation Fund, and the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Conservation Fund. All have partnerships agreements now in place with the CBF, and we are pleased with the progress that they have made. And we are also pleased to say that we are now also in the process of reaching to partnership agreements with the last of the first original trust funds, what we call the original 8 trust funds that we have been working with the longest. And in fact, for me, this is the first time all the logos are up in one place, because the St. Christopher Nevis Conservation Trust Fund has just completed their logo. So I am very pleased to see all the logos in one place. To quickly add that we have since, and right behind them, added the National Conservation Trust Funds of Guyana and of Haiti, as you heard today. And by October, the end of our financial year, which is October 2020, we expect that we will have partnership agreements with all the funds that you see represented here today, which is a major accomplishment for the CBF and one we are thrilled to recognize. We want to show this slide. It's a slide that we've shown for many years, as you all have known. And as it says in 2015, this is where we were with our National Conservation Trust Funds. We worked with them on legal establishments, creating and supporting their boards, in some cases pre-financing agreements, working on bylaws, and working on other aspects towards their CBF eligibility requirements. And as we just discussed, we worked then on their partnership agreements and then on their first payments to the CBF. So to go back, 2015, we had a lot of work, a lot of progress and a lot of work. to present, where we've added Haiti and Ghana, and we expect soon to have a very pretty green screen, as we would say. So we're very proud of those achievements and in reaching to that milestone. Finally, from me, as you will see, the CBF endowment has indeed begun making payments in funds, and we are very glad to see the increasing numbers and the work that we have been doing. As you can see, there are funds throughout that have signed agreements. We have a number of funds already distributing funds to the ground in the countries, in particular, Fonda Marina, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines have done and completed first calls and are giving out grants. We expect Jamaica and some others right behind them, and the rest of the partnership agreement funds to also be doing that soon. So we look forward to having grant-making activities throughout the region, on the ground and in the water very soon. And we are very, very pleased to have reached this milestone. Thank you to all who have supported the work that we have been doing, and we hope this gives you an idea of where the trust fund started and where they have reached. I will now ask the representatives from the trust funds who are now our next round of panelists to give us some feedback and thoughts on the discussions that we've just had on protected areas, effective management, and sustainable financing as it relates to the work that they've been doing. So I invite them all to turn their screens on, and we will run through a set of questions with them, and then the floor will be open again for some more discussion on this last presentation and the information you will hear from the partners and funds. So I'm going to start with Sasha Middleton, who is with the Marine Ecosystems Protected Areas Trust Fund in Antigua and Barbuda. And Sasha, just based on the discussions you heard earlier and the work that you know you are doing on the ground in Antigua and Barbuda, how has the MEPA Trust supported protected areas management? And what are the challenges you see and hear from what you just heard on facing in terms of effective management of protected areas?
Okay, thank you so much, Karen. Through the CBF support, the CBF hired a sustainable finance specialist, Mr. Edgy Kantin, back in 2017 to aid countries and relevant stakeholders to identify the costs needed to effectively manage protected areas. This was actually indeed helpful because it gives us an idea on, the recurrent costs and an estimate on how much funds is actually needed to effectively manage the protected areas. It will also help with the fundraising efforts as well. It is also embedded within our institutional documents, such as our grant-making manual, that priority will be given to projects that are within the protected area. So this is also one of our support that we are currently doing. Further to this, Hurricane Irma completely devastated our sister island, Barbuda, in 2017, and not only damaging at least 95% of the structures on the island, but also the MPA called the Condrington Lagoon. Through the funds given to the MEPA Trust from the UNDP, as well as Team Atlantic Rowers, the MEPA Trust, in collaboration with the Wade Institute, also is now involved in a mangrove restoration project in this area. I would like to also inform that, the MEPA Trust has already aided in supporting co-management agreements with the government and another community NGO, the Wallings Nature Reserve, to manage a protected area in Antigua, and thus far it has been successful through the dedication of the community and its partners. The challenges, I would say, as it relates to effectively managing the protected areas, I concur with the other panelists previously, is that limited funding has been one of the major drawbacks into effectively managing the protected areas. Because of limited or lack of funding, some of the parks have management plans, legislation, policies in place, but they are often paper park because they do not have sustainable funding or financing available to implement these plans. So therefore, they're basically paper parked on the shelves. Fundraising is also another issue because Antigua and Barbuda is a high income country. So we are sometimes no longer available, or I would say qualify for grants, but more so concessional loans, to actually fundraise in that regard. I mean, what they would always say is that it takes a village to raise a child. And so, the same principle applies right now, is that it falls now on us, the NGO, the community, the people, to at least, try to fundraise as best as we can so that, the recurring costs are being accounted for: hiring, training, retaining staff, and monitoring and education and awareness. So all of that plays a part in actually effectively managing the protected areas in Antigua. So that is some of our challenges that we currently face.
Thank you so much, Sasha, and thank you for the insight. I definitely will be following up on the issue of costs for management effectiveness in our question and answer section to come. But for now, I'm going to go to Van Buren Harry, and he is the Chief Executive Officer at the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Conservation Fund. And I'm going to ask him to tell us a little bit more about where he is now. How successful was your first call for proposals? And will any of the projects be focused on management effectiveness in a PA, in a protected area? If you could tell us a little bit, and then tell us why or why not, maybe, as to the problems you may or may not be having.
Hi, Van Buren. It looks like your audio isn't working, unfortunately. So perhaps you can, you're unmuted, so perhaps you can try and fix that and we can come back to you in a second.
Oh, I'm hearing him now. Go ahead, Van Buren.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good, great. Right. I was saying our first round of calls, it went very well. It was very successful. We issued our first call for proposal in December of 2019, and we focused on two of our grant-making goals. One goal, which is to protect and enhance critical ecosystems. And the second goal that we focused on was to create responsible communities that focuses on education and awareness and empowering citizens and so forth. Now our call for proposal, like the rest of the NCTFs in the region, is a two-step application process. So we went through the submission of concept notes and then submit full proposals before any project was approved for funding. Coming out of that, we would have approved, which is the board, after the technical advisory committee, of course, would have vetted all the concept notes and made recommendations to the board, and then vetted the full proposal and made recommendation to the board. 3 proposals were recommended to the board for funding, and those proposed projects were subsequently approved by the board. We approved a project to the Sustainable Grenadines Inc., and one to Serenity Dive Inc., and one to Tobago Keys Marine Park. The Serenity Dive Inc. project is a reef replanting and school dive program, and that is in the amount of just about $91,314 thereabout, EC dollars. That's just about 33,000 US dollars. And the Sustainable Grenadines Inc., their project is building a zero waste ecosystem for enhanced biodiversity of birds and people in the Belmont Salt Pan. And that project is about 88,000 EC dollars, sorry, and which is just about 32,000 US. Now the Tobago Keys Marine Park, which is the only marine protected area in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, basically is a marine park. They submitted a proposal which was approved, and their project was to enhance the enhancement of resource management capacity within the Tobago Keys Marine Park, which amounted to about 48,000 US dollars, which is a little over 131,000 EC dollars. The Tobago Keys Marine Park is about 6,450 hectares of multi-use land and sea. And it's home to a wide variety of biodiversity and flora and fauna. So we were really excited when the Tobago Keys Marine Park submitted a proposal, and that was in line with what we were focusing on as well. The way we we see that this is going to help with effective management of the Tobago Cays Marine Park is because the Tobago Cays Marine Park, the objectives of their project is right in line with effective management and building the capacity of the Tobago Cays Marine Park. A couple of their objectives were to reduce the emission of fuel efficiency to their primary patrol boat to 20%, and also to increase the institutional capacity by training 4 more rangers to add to their staff to be able to monitor the marine resources and moorings and so forth. And also to establish a comprehensive biophysical monitoring program that will provide the scientific underpinning for the adaptive management of the process of the Tobago Cays Marine Park. Now, this we see as aiding in the effective management of the Tobago Cays Marine Park because all these activities contribute to effective management. More members and staff, capacity building, the funding to be able to improve the equipment, to be able to monitor and manage the resources of the marine park properly, which is the mandate that they were set up for, to manage the resources of the Tobago Cays. So our first call was very successful, and we were, as I said, excited with all 3 projects, and more so contributing to the effective management of the only marine park in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Perfect, thank you. And I see some comments from Hyacinth on the work that they are doing in TCMP as well.
Yes.
So we expect you all will connect otherwise. We're going to move on to the lovely islands of the Bahamas. And Karen Panton, who is the Executive Director of the Bahamas Protected Areas Fund. Just to say all the islands in the Caribbean are lovely before I'm given bias credence for any reason, but I do like the Bahamas Islands. Karen, tell us a little bit more about the challenges to management effectiveness that you see within the Bahamian context, and how is management effectiveness captured in the work that BPAF will be doing and in terms of their priorities? You're still muted, Karen.
My apologies. Thank you, Karen, and good morning, everyone. The challenges to protected areas management in the Bahamas are accelerating. And as the world grapples with increasing shocks, there's pressure on funding. Inadequate budget space, as I think some of our presenters have already mentioned, is the single most significant challenge to management effectiveness within the Bahamas. A 2017 study commissioned by the Nature Conservancy set the annual cost to effectively manage the Bahamas National Protected Area System at $70 million annually in 2018, compared to $10.58 million in anticipated funding. BPAF is the funding mechanism established for the Protected Area System. However, for protected area managers to fully implement their management plans and realize successful outcomes, there must be a strong and concerted need to boost the funding. One pressing issue that BPAF has recently addressed is the inequity in the allocation of funding to the Bahamas, despite our contributions to people and livelihoods across the region. Management effectiveness is also impacted by a lack of capacity at various levels and is seen in insufficient and inadequately trained human resources, and also in a lack of infrastructure, inadequate systems and processes, and the lack of technical capacity and scientific data. A third challenge identified is the need for improved stakeholder engagement. Environmentalists must, as the ministerial panel noted on Monday, find that balance between conservation and livelihoods. One environmentalist put it succinctly when she said that starving people don't care about protected area laws. Through stakeholder engagement, conservationists and local communities can co-develop the strategies that best support sustainable livelihoods and long-term protection. We must all work more strategically with the private sector as well, presenting our work as social investments essential to their business continuity. The fourth challenge lies with the perception that protected areas have been set aside for the benefit of special interests. Environmentalists are also often seen as strange or funky, This presents a challenge when these persons and sometimes communities directly oppose protected areas management. Education and outreach must be delivered that can help to change these entrenched mindsets. This messaging should include the noble stories of environmentalists, politicians, academics, and community-minded individuals who have sacrificed and made personal financial contributions to the protection of our countries. Political will is the fifth challenge throughout the Caribbean, especially as it relates to innovative financing. And finally, as we all know, the impacts of climate change, particularly rising and heating seas, ocean acidification, flooding, unusual storms, new and rapidly spreading diseases, like the discovery of the aggressive stony coral tissue loss disease in the Bahamas following Hurricane Dorian. So how does BPAF incorporate these challenges or management effectiveness into our activities? Management effectiveness is a key funding priority for BPAF. In fact, 3 of our 4 funding priorities and 13 of our 17 funding activities through 2022 specifically target improved management effectiveness and enforcement, promote compliance, address threats to ecosystem health, and foster more inclusive governance of protected areas. These activities, which are meant to strengthen the protected area system, include, I'll name just a few, the development of research or monitoring programs, improvements in infrastructure, including a data management platform, skills trainings for protected area managers, the development of sustainable finance and business plans for protected areas at the site level, and improvements in climate resilience of protected areas. We're also working, and about to work, I should say, with the Nature Conservancy on a formal monitoring, evaluation, learning, and reporting platform for the BPAF that will help us not only to assess the outcomes and activities, performance of our grantees, but also the performance of BPAF. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen, for that very, very comprehensive and insightful description of the Bahamas protected areas work, as well as BPAF in particular, and their priorities and areas of focus. We're going to move to Jamaica. I'll be biased again. I'm allowed. I'm Jamaican. And welcome Danielia Aitchison, who is the fund manager of the Natural Conservation Trust Fund of Jamaica. And she's going to tell us a little bit more about how the NCTFJ plans to support effective management of protected areas in Jamaica. Welcome, Danielia.
Thanks, Karen. Good morning, everyone. The NCTFJ was actually established to support effective management of protected areas in Jamaica. We were actually a recommendation of a National Protected Area System project that was funded by Jeff and UNDP through UNDP. And so the NCTFJ was established to respond to a huge gap, financial gap in protected areas management. It is therefore our mandate to mobilize financial resources to fund activities that contribute to long-term sustainability of the National Protected Area System of Jamaica. And we plan to provide greater support to the protected areas by establishing a sustainable finance mechanism, as this is integral in achieving effective management, and we are currently and actively working to develop a sustainable finance mechanism at the Trust Fund. So we are currently set up to provide financial support through our grants to eligible organizations. And it is actually a minimum requirement that applicants who respond to our calls for proposal must be operating in a protected area or has identified an area that is characterized as high priority for the program or project, or is an area of environmental significance for inclusion in the National Protected Area System. And we also try to address the gaps through our calls for proposal, looking at constraints for implementing programs. So protected areas managers on the ground constantly speak about how some donors do not allow for using resources or have a very low cap on resources, human resources, to carry out programs. So we do not actually allocate this as an administrative fee, but NCTFJ is actually allowing human resources to that is aligned or directly aligned with carrying out programs and projects as a direct cost of the project and not administrative. We also see that NCTFJ can assist the protected areas through coordinating national level joint and share programs. So sharing of resources, whether it be materials or some equipment, organizing training of the network, facilitating networking within the protected areas managers to reduce duplication and also to increase efficiency. For example, the marine protected areas in Jamaica now have a challenge with their resources, as the government was not able to provide an annual subvention this year to the marine protected areas in Jamaica because of the ban on conch, that the cess from conch usually goes into a fund that supports the marine protected areas in Jamaica. Now we have a ban on conch, so that funding resource has completely dried up. And so the marine protected areas are in a very sad situation currently, and there is actually no funding towards their operation this year. So what the NCTFJ did, we had a meeting with them in March, where we had a workshop, and we actually developed a action plan to respond to a common need of the marine protected areas. And this was basically looking at raising public awareness of marine protected areas, their importance, and developing communication materials or an advocacy program at the national level, letting or residents and other Jamaicans or diaspora know of the challenges and the issues that are currently being faced by the marine protected areas. We also see our role through facilitating joint programs at the national level, where we can play a financial and administrative management role for the protected areas, as some may not be able to manage certain amount of resources. And so the NCTFJ could position itself to manage undertake the financial management and the reporting of much larger programs that could support the protected area system. We also saw that we can facilitate network of the protected area system in Jamaica, because even in our meeting, we had the opportunity. It was the first time that all marine protected area managers were in the same place, and they could exchange what each area is doing to see if it is something that could be replicated to support their revenue generation in different areas across Jamaica. It is also important, and through that, the NCTFJ had resources, as we had decided, as the board had decided, that we would split our current resources as 80%, 20% of our funding. 80% goes to direct call for proposal, which would be only, because of our limited resources, only supporting 2 or 3 protected areas on the ground. So through the 20% that we call a strategic investment, we'll be able to have a much greater impact in facilitating a program such as what I mentioned before. So we'll have more of the system being benefiting from resources, because it is not, we have to play a role in making a difference. And if we're just doing just cause that only support 2 or 3 protected areas on the ground, we're not really making we're not really filling a gap. So strategically allocating a portion for programs or national programs, although it may need co-financing, at least we have developed a program and getting response from the protected areas themselves to develop this action plan to actually create proposals and also go and find resources on their behalf.
Thank you, and respond directly to them. Thank you so much, Danelia, very interesting. And just to know that each of the National Conservation Trust Funds are independent trust funds with boards made up of government, non-government, academia, stakeholders in their various countries. And so the idea is that they are that board of directors is who works with them on how best to manage the funds in the countries, in each of the respective countries. I move on to Gertrude Duncan, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Grenada Sustainable Development Trust Fund. And Gertrude is going to tell us a little more about how they are considering support to protected areas and management effectiveness. They have received their first payment and will be giving grants out within the next 12 months period. So Gertrude, tell us more. Sorry, Gertrude, we're not hearing you. No, we're still not hearing you. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe James can help you with microphone. Sorry about that. So you want to try again, Gertrude?
Gertrude,
No.
maybe you're able to just unplug your headphones and use the normal computer.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Perfect, yes.
Thank you, Karen, very much. Good morning. It is indeed a pleasure to be here and to share with all of you. I will try my best to answer the question in 5 minutes. That's the time allotted to me. For those who do not know, because the question was asked at our table yesterday, the Grenada Sustainable Development Trust Fund, the GSTDF, was founded in 2016 by the government of Grenada, community and private sectors to catalyze and support the conservation and effective management of coastal, marine, and terrestrial ecosystems and sustainable development activities in Grenada. The fund began operations on November the 1st, 2018. So basically, we are in the 18th month of operations. To date, we have signed our pre-financing agreement and received 77% of our funds. We have also signed our partnership agreement and received 50% of our first tranche of grant funds. We have developed our operations manual, our strategic plan, our grant making manual. We are working on our resource mobilization plan and our communication plans, and we are also in the process of developing our website. To answer the question of support to PA's effective management, today more than ever, in addition to the conservation function, it is recognized that protected areas contribute to human welfare, poverty alleviation, and sustainable development. Management of protected areas is the responsibility of the organizations entrusted to do so. However, management effectiveness is a collaborative effort amongst key stakeholders. Although the GSTDF is not entrusted with the management responsibilities of PAs in Grenada, it plays a very supportive role, which is articulated in its grant-making manual, which was developed with the assistance of a consultant, Camille, funded by TNC in collaboration with CBF. In fact, Camille assisted in the development of all our documents mentioned above, and a big thank you to Camille. The GSTDF 3-year grant-making strategy 2020 to 2022 is in accordance with its strategic plan and has 4 goals. The first goal is to build climate resilience. Goal 2, support management effectiveness of protected areas. Goal 3, tackle pollution impacts into water and land. And goal 4 is to promote sustainable livelihoods. These 4 goals for the next 3 years fall under one theme, which is biodiversity protection, management, and restoration. However, the grant-making goals mentioned above have adopted 3 cross-cutting lines support with that of capacity building, research and policy, communication, and awareness. This is so because for goal 1, build climate resilience, you need to build capacity, you need to conduct research, and you also need to build awareness and communication. And that goes also for all of the other goals. With regard to goal 2 of the GSTDF's grant-making strategy, support management effectiveness of protected areas, the GSTDF has identified or is considering support of the PA's management in 3 areas. That of funding for PA's management, 2, maintenance of cultural and tourism assets in PAs, and 3, raise awareness of PA's economic value. Management plans for all the designated PAs so far have been developed with the assistance of key organizations such as TNC, US Agency for International Development, Caribbean Regional Environmental Program, just to name a few. We anticipate that the implementation of these plans will be very soon. Implementing management plans for protected areas, as mentioned earlier, is not an easy task. It requires a lot of resources, both financial, human, proper equipment, etc. This is one of the challenges the Division of Fisheries is facing right now, that of accessing the required resources to implement these plans. Nevertheless, it is a requirement that has to be done sooner than later to achieve the desired results. Expected outcomes from implementing the GSTDF's grant-making strategy and supporting PA's effective management are increased funding for PA's management, maintained cultural and tourism assets in PAs, and to raise the awareness of PA's economic value. The GSTDF is in the process of doing its first call for proposal. The mechanism is being put in place. That is the constitution of the TAC committee, the Technical Advisory Committee, which comprises of persons with technical capacity from NGOs, which will spearhead the grant-making process. Like most Caribbean countries, Grenada is heavily dependent on tourism, and as a result of the global health issues, quite a number of persons are now unemployed. What we are seeing now in Grenada is an increase in the reconstitution or formation of community development groups, especially in areas of PAs, and therefore the development and management of these natural resources are very important for sustainable livelihood. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gertrude, and good luck as you go forward with your processes and in particular your call for proposals and grant making. We're going to move on to the Dominican Republic. Josefina Gomez is the Director of Planning with Fondo Morena, and she's going to talk to us and tell us more. They are indeed the first partner NCTF with the CBF. They signed in December 2016. Tell us a little bit now, Josefina, about how CBF resources contribute to the effective management in the MPA that you are working in.
So first of all, I would like, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, I would like to say good morning or good afternoon, whatever it's appropriate to all of you. And thank you to have the opportunity to talk to you and to present Fondo Morena to you all. As an institution autonomous from the Environment Ministry, we have been very much interested in the efficiency of management of protected areas. So from the very beginning, we've been working with the ministry to find out what we can do with the partnership with CBF. We had this consultancy with Ajikantan, and as all of you, most of you have, and he pointed out which were the needs for us to be really the gap, the financing gap that we have. So the ministry understood that they could do some sort of pilot experience doing things the way he designed or pointed out. And they choose a small area, although the consultant presented the idea that it should be started with a bigger area. But they believe that they have, there will be a better option to have a small area to try to bring up more efficiency to management. So what we do is that, first of all, the area was chosen, and we started with a call for projects to know a little more about basic knowledge of the area. So 5 projects were presented, choose. And we may project on improving management through training to rangers and people working in the area. Our governance and community involvement with the area project. 2 projects more related to biology, to the mangroves areas and the reef corals, and a special one on Trichechus manatus, the manatee, which is the very much important species in that area. So with all these projects, it was decided that now they have to have some sort of infrastructure improvement. And we decided to build a center house for a visiting center and a tower for watching manatees. So we are still in the process of constructions of these infrastructures. And this year, we are dealing with how to put this area really to make a very good center for ecotourism. So the idea is to make this small place a good ecosystem, a good ecotourism center. So the efficiency is improved by having a lot of activities that have money, and they will, all this money will then go to improve the needs of the area. So in that process we are, this year we want to make projects for developing a good management, a good business plan, dealing precisely with tourism. And also to take care of which are the needs of the management plan that the area has. With that, we are thinking that not this year, because we won't have any time, we can provide some more infrastructure for this, all these things that are needed are put in place. So with this small pilot plan in this protected area, marine protected area, we want to, let's say, put all this experience to all the protected areas in the Dominican Republic or elsewhere. So building from the very beginning, just which are the basic knowledge we need, which are the infrastructure we need, which are the training these people need, and then to improve the efficiency. All this, many thanks to CBF, is done by this CBF resources. So thank you very much. Hope you all are fine and your families are fine too. Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you, Josefina. Very, very interesting. And again, another perspective working with one pilot site, one marine protected area, targeting efforts and then thinking of expanding. Thank you for that information and as I said, another perspective to work on. I now invite the second, I didn't even know I had put them in this order, the second trust fund to sign, which is the St. Lucia National Conservation Fund. Craig Henry is the program manager, and I acknowledge that Dr. Vasanta Chase is also in the. Craig is going to tell us a little more about, given the mandate of the SLU-NCF, how do you think your role can support effective management of protection? Oh, I just saw a note from him. Oh, you're muted, Craig.
Yes. Sorry about that. Thank you, Karen. Good morning, colleagues, friends from all over. I'd like to take this opportunity to expand a bit on our work and how we see our role in supporting effective management of PAs. The mission of the St. Lucia National Conservation Fund really to secure and provide sustainable financing to support conservation restoration and effective management of St. Lucian's biodiversity and natural resources. So the NCTF fulfills this mission through its two core work program areas. That is grant making, and so doing providing funding to local agencies, public, private partners or agencies, NGOs, CBOs, and CSOs for initiatives that seek to promote the conservation, protection, and sustainable use of our biodiversity and natural resources. And the second core work program area is the sustainable finance. And that is seeking to build the finance portfolio of the organization in order to maintain not only its grant-making program, but also importantly to provide institutional support to grantees and other actors within the conservation landscape to build national capacity in support of the broad goal of biodiversity and natural resource conservation and sustainability. We acknowledge that management of protected areas involves a wide range of actors with diverse interests, skills, and resources that somehow have to be organized in a manner that supports the specified aim of the protected area. And to the extent that protected areas management exists formally in a codified document or based on a shared agreement or aspiration, management actions often do fall short of the desired goals and expectations as a result of many factors, including limited funding, manpower, technological restraints, a lack of responsibility to crises, which can overwhelm any management regime, and of course, external pressures. While the SL-UNCF cannot define to PA management what effective management is, we're certainly ready, willing, and able to engage with protected area managers and partners in determining and achieving management objectives and activities that have support of the community, and of course, that's guided by research and best practice. Some of these may include supporting public awareness programs, staff training, sustainable livelihoods exploration, and promotion. Sustainable finance, of course, is a major area of focus for PA management or any PA management intervention program. And I would like to echo Mr. Camille David's words in saying that access to stable and long-term financial resources is key to effective protected areas systems management. And through our core work program areas, we are part of, and if not, to borrow a term, a sustainable finance architecture, but a national one at that supports St. Lucian's biodiversity and natural resource conservation goals. And by its very nature, the SL-UNCF is different from traditional sources of funding, owing to our flexibility and responsivity to the national context and needs, and more importantly, building a store of funds or pool of resources available for protected areas management activities. And we have managed to pull these resources together, not only with CBF funding, or direct from CBF, but other partners in the community, such as the St. Lucia Hotel and Tourism Association, Marcy, in terms of putting these resources together. In addition, let me also not hesitate to say that the SL-UNCF has made it a policy to ensure that any intervention, funding, or other support advance the conservation-oriented national priorities, which include PA management outcomes. And in so doing, we are strengthening the national effort to secure biodiversity and national resource sustainability goals. A major priority set by the St. Lucia National Conservation Fund as well is to support institutional strengthening of groups so that they can function more effectively. Research and our own experience have taught us that internal dynamics of any entity have a major influence on the success of its stated goals, whether they're short-term, medium, or long-term. Therefore, a major target of ours are CBOs and NGOs who operate at the grassroots level and who have close linkages to natural resources. The goal is not only to support livelihoods, but deliberately and strategically invest in the groups themselves so that they can see the benefit of aligning their objectives and activities with those of conservation management aims, for instance, protected mangroves or marine reserves, so that they can be more effective and reliable partners, and that management of protected resources more decentralized and localized. So we will continue to support PA management with a view to, as we view our role as a committed and reliable partner, investor, and mentor, and align with management outcomes, including both environmental values, conservation, and impact on communities. And I wish to conclude that by saying that although studies have shown that in spite of inadequate funding and management processes that have an impact on PA's management, the indicators are that protected areas are contributing to biodiversity conservation and community well-being. So I will, of course, again, bring up a line from Dr. Robert Brumbaugh, who spoke earlier, that nature conservation is our best investment. And with that, I want to thank you and end my presentation.
Thank you so much, Craig. Very interesting. Okay, we have one more trust fund, and then we will go to questions. So I encourage you to put your questions in the Q&A box. We have some coming in. The question for our newest executive director, fund manager, Patricia King, who is within her first month as executive director of the St. Christopher and Nevis Conservation Fund. It's to tell us about how sustainable financing and effective management would, so is it a focus of the protected areas and MMAs in St. Kitts and Nevis, and how the fund plans on working with that?
Hi, good afternoon. Well, it's afternoon for me now. So hi, good afternoon, everyone. I would just like to share my screen and present. It's not, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. There you go.
Okay, so essentially at the SCNCF, we really have to build on the shoulders of giants because we are just starting, and so we have to really look at what is existing and how we can move forward. So whether or not, whether effective management is in place, can be in place, is a part of the makeup of St. Kitts and Nevis, even a focus on sustainable financing, how does that really, is that existing, and then how can we move to the next level? So we actually have in St. Kitts and Nevis on St. Kitts, the Central Forest Reserve and Royal Bastia Valley, that's already protected, that's terrestrial. On Nevis, we have the Nevis Peak and Camps River watershed. That's a proposed area, but we are currently, as a country, in the pathway of establishing that. And also we have, that was established in 2016, the SKN MMA, which is a marine management area that spans around a 2-mile radius around the coastline of St. Kitts and Nevis. Now we have to look at others in order to make best practices that are relevant to our local context. So looking at success stories and shared knowledge from our other NCTFs and also Pacific and African SIDS. So you kind of help the grantees to really form a strong basis on what they will be implementing. We would also be looking inward because there's actually some very successful stories from our St. Kitts Sustainable Destination Council and how that intersectoral initiative has really done really good stuff. So we would also be, again, looking at them. We have to plan through the lens of science. and using science-based policies for action and implementation. We have a number of reports that's not just reports on a shelf, but things that we use for implementation. We have things like the National Adaptation Strategy. We have the Climate Change Policy. We have the Comprehensive Management Plan for the SKN MMA, Marine Zoning Plan, which would have really formed the basis for even reaching the SKN MMA, and the Ocean Governance Policy that is on the verge of being completed. Now we have some legislation in place, so that also presents some interesting structure that we have to move forward on. When it comes to shared vision, we're looking at co-management as one of the mechanisms for financing. And so we actually have legislation that supports co-management. We have documentation and reports that help us to be able to implement these things. And so when we reach a stage we are providing grants, all of these would actually go towards helping this strategic outlook that St. Kitts and Nevis already has in place. So we have models for effective management of specifically the Narrows and Newcastle Bay area. That report was done in 2018. We have the aquaculture development strategy. We also have a FAD group, that's the fish aggregating device group that also is getting started. And so there are a number of different things that we have so far, so that when we actually hit the ground running, there are things that are there so that we can really move towards effective management and assist with financing possibilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricia, and to all the funds for the presentation. I want to acknowledge that the idea of the concept was to have the discussion of the high level, what we have found so far in the region, and then the on the ground, on the water persons who are trying to implement the work of management effectiveness and sustainable financing, and generally trying to do conservation management with stakeholders and get grants to tell us exactly why management effectiveness and sustainable financing has been a challenge, if it has been, or what they have done to make it work. So I think we were able to tie that in. It's been very good. I've seen lots of comments about just recognizing having all the funds together and able to be on screen with warm bodies, able to answer the questions. And now I will go straight into the questions. And I see the first question I'm actually going to ask Yaba, who is on as a panelist, to quickly answer, and then we will go into more of the other questions. The first question asks about the early challenges in setting up the trust fund, and maybe talk a little bit about making the link with protected areas management and the ideas of the wider scope of some of the trust funds. Morning, Yaba. Afternoon.
Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you to all of the colleagues from the National Conservation Trust Funds for such great interventions. We do have a lot of lessons learned in the process of building all the trust funds that are part of the Caribbean sustainable finance architectures, but I'm going to highlight only a few of those lessons that I think are most crucial. I think one of the first lessons is that in the beginning of the process, there was a lot of energy, rightly so, put towards how do we create the legal structures and the governance structures of the trust funds, and that is definitely paramount for the trust funds to be successful. However, as part of that process, we probably didn't identify how much money was really needed to set up the trust funds and then to finance their early operations. And this has been one of the greatest challenges, because we have been trying to work, all of us together, trying to set up these institutions that are supposed to be working towards sustainable financing, and we ourselves have sometimes had the challenge of being sustainable ourselves, right? I think we have made very good strides in the last few years to ensure that sustainability, but it's definitely an area that we always need to keep an eye on to ensure that our institutions ourselves are sustainable so that we can deliver the mission related to sustainable financing for conservation actions on the ground and on the water. Another very important lesson, and I think in this one, we have definitely been very successful, but it's still a lesson learned, is that the governance structures of all the funds, as was already mentioned, incorporate government, non-government, and private sector. And being able to bring together all these actors to the table probably took a lot more time than what we all thought. But at the end, it was a very rich process. So I think that the lesson learned here is that when building conservation trust funds, be it in the Caribbean or elsewhere, it's probably going to take a lot more time than what we think it actually requires, because there has to be a lot of consultation process. We have to align the visions of government, non-government, private sector organizations to ensure that everybody feels comfortable coming to the table and uniting behind a common vision and goal in each of the countries where we are all working. And I think the third lesson learned I would like to share with you, and this is some ongoing work that I personally would like us as a group of trust funds to focus on more in the future, is to really identify better together with our partner governments and partner organizations, what is the true financial gap for conservation in our region. Sometimes we talk about the numbers behind the overall Caribbean sustainable finance architecture, and it may sound like we have a lot of money, and yes, of course, nominally speaking, we do. In the CBF, for example, we have a pretty sizable endowment fund. But when you compare that amount of money available and the returns on that endowment vis-a-vis the need for conservation action, we are probably, it's not a drop in the bucket necessarily, but we are far still from closing that financial gap. And I just want to link back this comment to that from Brian O'Donnell from the Campaign for Nature. So we need to do more. We need to create more partnerships. We need to be more creative to continue to close that financial gap. Thank you so much, Karen, and I hope those lessons learned are useful to everyone.
Thank you very much, Yaba. Very useful, yes. And one of the comments that I had and I mentioned before is the discussion of management effectiveness being beyond protected areas management, and indeed the idea of it being more incorporated in what we are doing. So we have gotten feedback as trust funds and as groups working in the area that management effectiveness, and this being the systems of management effectiveness, are costly. And what we have to do is figure out how that is more incorporated into the process of protected areas management, and how much we can support that. And as you heard from the various trust funds, that happens in different ways in each of the countries that we are working in. There is a question that was asked by Serge Kamgang. I hope I am not doing his name any injustice. And it is, and I think each of you can answer really quickly. It asks, what are the major challenges to be addressed financially to promote sustainable tourism after COVID-19, and while promoting it, ensure effective management of Caribbean protected areas? So I don't know, I will watch for your mics to unmute for those who want to start off the discussion, but the question is put to each of the trust funds. Each of you have sustainable tourism foci in your island. And we would love to hear your perspective on how COVID has affected it and what it might mean for you in terms of what you might do going forward. Any volunteers to start?
Well, Karen, did someone go ahead, or should I take a lead?
No, go ahead, go ahead.
A leap of faith here. in the Bahamas, where for the most part our tourism has focused on sun, and sea, and to some extent casinos, I think it's going to be interesting to promote this idea of responsible tourism. And we were chatting about this in the session yesterday and what it will cost. Bahamian Islands are also, as you heard Minister said, you know, we have 15 major islands, 700 other islands and keys, but over 2,000 little spots. And for us, I think the cost of just getting to these different islands and developing a product that's a little different from the norm, it's going to take a vast amount of education. It's going to take some outreach and certainly planning and willingness on the part of private sector and other interests to make the kind of investment that's necessary to turn it around. We were also talking yesterday about how do we ensure that we as trust funds, maybe as a regional group of trust funds, can put in there the interventions and the sort of innovative schemes in order to encourage responsible travelers to support long-term sustainable protection of our areas. And I think we have a plan, and I think, you know, to somehow use technology and use all these new options that are evolving since COVID-19 to really tap into these responsible travelers and turn around our tourism so that it's sustainable, so that local communities can benefit, so that those communities that are close to or within buffer areas or around protected areas can also participate. And so that we can now really address conservation and poverty alleviation. We've got Bahamian Islands, small islands, that are really struggling, out islands or family islands as we call them. And to the extent that we can move the tourism from Nassau, Grand Bahama, or Abaco, even though those two other islands were hit by Hurricane Dorian really badly, we can then grow together and turn this into sustainable development, sustainable livelihoods. And these are all good outcomes while also preserving the natural resources of our countries. The final thing I want to say, and I'm pop off, as a group, we have been talking as trust funds about this whole idea of the blue economy. And I think we have developed a paper on the blue economy concept and what it is we'd like to see. And I think this is going to be absolutely critical and important for the Caribbean region to go out there and present our own understanding and our own desires and wants for what this blue economy means as large ocean states for our region. So those would be my thoughts on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Karen. Yes, Josefina, please.
Yeah, I would like to point out, to stress out, the way that Karen has spoken. She has said us, we. So I think that's a very good thing that had brought COVID, you know. It had brought us together with this means. So for me, we can do anything together. And the vision that we may have is a Caribbean vision. I'm in the Dominican Republic, I'm Spanish speaking. Sometimes I get, you know, my things with the English. Most of you are English speaking, but we have Haiti. They have French speaking. So now we are just like developing something that is a Caribbean vision. And I think that coming together, working together, everybody has experiences. And when we join together and share our experiences, we can share that. You know, we can build something really that is important to all of us. So for me, the most important thing is that we are together and we are going to be together. Isn't it true? Yes, we are going to be together. Okay.
Yeah, I was supposed to nod in case you didn't know. Thank you so much, Josefina. Wonderful work. Pastor, is it you?
Yes. I love Josefina's intervention and Karen just now. I fully agree with what they're saying. I would also just even to address the question financially is that in Antigua and Barbuda, for instance, we have legislations and policies in place, but we do not have any funding currently available to monitor the area. So for instance, a National Parks Authority, that's actually a sustainable, self-sustained finance park. And one of the issues is that it heavily dependent on tourism, and the park has already lost over 80% of its funding in that respect. And what we have recognized in Antigua is that we've had 2 devastating accidents where because the areas did not have you know, signs or declared a no propeller area, what has happened, boats that was going in within the park, the propellers of that boat struck a tourist and she died. Also, with regards to one of the endangered species, you have the turtles that are swimming in that area as well, and because of a propeller again from the boat, that also struck the turtle and that turtle died, and that is one of the endangered turtles within the region. So you would have situations now that the park is now in a position that it has lost 80% of its income. You have maybe policies in place, but they cannot implement. So this is why with the Mappa Trust, what we have decided that, you know, we are going to explore in doing a pilot grant with the National Parks Authority to provide a vessel, a monitoring vessel that would enhance, you know, the protection of that area in terms of monitoring, ensuring that boats are not coming in and out that area. It will also be in a way sustainable that tourists can come and be able to swim in those particular areas, and they will be able to be charging, let's say, a finance or funding, you know, per head. So a cap, you know, would be charged by the tourists to basically use that area, and that will be able to, you know, sustainably generate funding to the park so the park can able to continue doing that. So this is one of the things that we are currently facing, is that now with COVID, the impact has been very bad. So we are now trying as a conservation trust fund to support that going forward with the protected area management.
Thank you, Sasha. What I'm going to do is ask the second question, and then I'll go back to asking any of the funds to respond to either both of the questions as we begin the wrap-up phase. So the second question is, in the long term, how do the NCTFs think they can have more impact on conservation in their countries? So we know you're doing some work now. What do you see going forward in terms of your role in making an impact and the impact you can have? So I would ask between you all, maybe some of the ones who haven't answered yet, to give us your feedback and thoughts on those questions, and then we will move to wrapping up. I think I saw Van Burn ready to answer.
Hi, Karen. But just very quickly, the conservation trust funds throughout the region, we have our mandates, and in order to achieve that and to have that impact that we're looking for, one of the biggest hurdles that we need to overcome is where education and awareness is concerned. Funding is critical, yes, but education and awareness in our jurisdiction and throughout the region is very, very, very critical. And conservation is everybody's business. Be it you in kindergarten or secondary school, the education and awareness from that level should start. And that translates into all aspects of life. So I think how we can make a greater impact is to shift a lot of our focus and attention on that generational mindset thinking towards conservation and the importance of biodiversity and what it does for our planet and for you as a person. So I think while funding is very, very crucial, education and awareness would help us to create a much more impact on what we're trying to achieve. Because if everybody, one person donates, has that mindset shift and is able to recognize that, hey, if I turn my tap off, I save some water. If I plant a tree, it helps the environment. You know, it goes a long way.
Yes, and can I add as well, in addition to what Van Burn agree and support that, is to continue to seek and build partnerships, and so that you are able to pool resources, and these resources together through networks, through any other arrangement can have a greater impact, whether in some specific issue or area. And I think given the past conversations that the NCTFs have had, and even reaching out to other potential partners, this is what we are striving to do, because we do recognize there's strength in numbers. We have different skills, there are different things that we are expert at, areas of focus and experience that will help us to have a more definitive yet and stronger ability to achieve the things that we want to do. So I think partnerships are important. Reaching out, seeking out partners is one of the things that we should always strive to do.
Thank you very much. Gertrude? And we begin to wrap up.
Yes,
Gertrude and then Danielle.
Okay, I would not repeat what my colleagues had said, and I agree with what they said, but I would just want to add that promotion of community-based tourism is very important. Committees should take responsibilities for the assets, because we can all agree that each MPAs are within communities and they have critical assets that can be managed. So once we promote community-based tourism, we can see that communities will be responsible for the assets, they would manage it and then generate income and and assist with all the challenges of COVID-19.
That's a very good point. Thank you. Daniela?
Just to add, one of the vital points that must be relayed is that the Conservation Trust funds are, well, for example, Jamaica, we're set up to support continuity, because too often they're 4-year, 3-year programs, and after we don't consider sustainability of the actions or the activities for continuity. So even through our grants, we support programs that are ongoing, so that we can see how we can continue to build or scale out and scale up on the programs that and the projects that are actually on the ground and have been successful. So that is one of the roles that the Conservation Trust funds play in the region to ensure long-term conservation efforts.
Thank you. Anybody else for any final words? We are just 1 minute over.
Karen, could I just speak on the long-term, perhaps, ability of the National Conservation Trust funds to support conservation? Just real quick.
Sure.
I think because our mandate is to find and secure sustainable financing, the very fact that we are uniquely sort of connected to organizations like the CBF and that has reached all across the globe makes it possible for us to be looking for new and innovative ways. And I think that's the thing that separates us. The newness, the potential to access capital and markets that are uncommon and different puts us, I don't want to say, puts us in a space, a different space that we can actually open or extend the pie as opposed to simply working within the local markets. I think the second thing, and Van Buren noted this, is our ability to network. It's just been amazing since COVID-19, the way we've all worked together with the CBF and with ourselves to be looking for, other sources of funding to do this important work on the ground. And I think that as National Country Trust funds, yes, but also being a part of this regional structure really helps to cause us all to think out of the box for new and exciting ways. And I think that's one of the ways that we're going to ensure that we've got financing available for conservation on the ground for the future.
Thank you. I think that's the perfect way to wrap up today's discussion. So I want to thank you all as panelists for your answers and your presentations. They were definitely interesting, and I hope to the audience that it gave you some insight on the work of the National Conservation Trust Funds and the CBF and what we've been doing in the Conservation Finance Program. A lot of you have asked for more information. I have asked our fund managers to put their contact email addresses in the chat. And for those who were not able to, I put mine. Please feel free to contact me to get further information and contact details for any of the trust funds that you did not see information on. Please feel free to visit the website of the trust funds. I'm not going to rattle them off, but most of the trust funds do have active websites and Facebook pages. I know a couple are still working on it, so please make sure and check them out and like them and friend them and do all the social media things that need to be done. Thank you again to you all. And I already got thumbs up from my other Karen, so that's always good. A special thanks to our interpreters. It was a particularly long session for them, and we appreciate them dealing with our fast-talking words as we wrapped up. Thank you to everybody. And we will see some of you later for a discussion. I'm going to hand over to James to tell you more about the exciting presentation for later and for tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
that was
everybody.
Thank
really
you.
fantastic
Thank you.
discussion. A really fantastic discussion, and so good to hear from all across the region about the progress that the National Conservation Trust funds have been making in this area. Make sure that you have a chance to have a stretch, have a walk around, have a cup of coffee, whatever you need to do, because in about an hour and a half, we are going on a trip to the Bahamas. For those of you who couldn't, well, obviously all of us couldn't make it there in person this year, we're going to do the next best thing and have an interactive field trip with our partners who will be leading that from the Bahamas Reef Environment Educational Foundation, BREEF. And they put a lot of effort into this session to make sure it's interactive and engaging, and will be a really exciting time. So join us there in an hour and a half. That's 2 p.m. EST. Myself and Karen will be there too, and I hope a lot of you will be joining us. And then again tomorrow, don't be sad, but it is our last session tomorrow, 10 a.m. EST, scaling up ecosystem-based adaptation in the Caribbean. That session will be around 2 hours, and then in the same session, an extra 30 minutes for the closing, where you can hear a wrap up from the CBF representatives. So thank you all who've stayed here for the whole session right till the end, and we will see you again for the field trip. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, James.
Bye-bye.